It's time once again for another cold front.
Today we'll be talking about severe thunderstorms.
From the climatology of thunderstorms to how they form, we are here to break down the details.
The cold front starts right now.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Cold Front. I'm Sabrina Bates. Severe thunderstorms impact much of the United States, and we are just beginning to experience severe weather as we make our way through the spring season. Before we explain the impacts of severe thunderstorms, meteorologist Joie Bettenhausen is on the wall to explain how thunderstorms form. Joy?
Thanks, Sabrina. So first we're going to talk about the three different types of storms and exactly how they form. You have the single cell storm. Now this is the smallest in scale of all three of them. They only last about 30 minutes and they have an updraft and downdraft pair, and I'll go in a little bit of detail in my next slide. Second, we'll have multi-cell thunderstorms. Now these are when you get different types of cells and you can see them on the individual radar signatures. Old cells will die and decay away while new cells will develop, and an example of that is a squall line, which we've seen on radar before. Finally, you have supercells. Now this is the main cell that usually can become severe. Now you'll get rotation in the mesocyclone, and that's internally where you get those tornadoes. So first, let's talk about the single cell. So you have your towering cumulus stage, you have your mature stage, and then you have your dissipating stage here. So first with the towering cumulus stage, it's mainly updraft dominated. So you see all these arrows pointing up. It's exactly pulling air into the storm. Now the green here is rain, and then the blue here is snow. So you'll get definitely two different types of precipitation, but it's mostly suspended here. The storm is just starting to build in intensity. This is the mature stage. Now this stage does not last for very long. So here you have your green, and that's your rain, your blue is snow, and then this purple here, these are your ice crystals. So you're starting to get those ice crystals to form. You not only have an updraft with these up arrows here, you also have a downdraft as well. So the downdraft is where you start to see some of that precipitation fall. Now like I said, the stage does not last for very long, but this is your final stage, and this is the dissipating stage. You can see all the arrows here point down. So this is mainly downdraft dominated. The precipitation has fallen too much to completely cut off that updraft, and this is where you'll see most of the heaviest precipitation. Now next we're going to transition to multi-cell storms. And here's just an example of a single cell storm on a radar image. But look at that. This is your multi-cell here. Definitely very big in terms of scale. So with those multi-cells, you'll see the individual cells right here. Now those cells will begin to die off while new cells ahead of it start to form. Now these systems can last from several minutes to even hours and can go over a large distance. Now these aren't usually severe, but they can be at times. Finally, this is your supercell. Now this is a classic image of one right here. Now this can usually be tornadic. You'll see this hook echo right here. Now that's very classic of a supercell. And then you'll have sometimes referred to as a debris ball, where you can actually see it looks like a circle on there, and it's usually whatever the tornado or storm has started to pick up in terms of debris, whether it's pieces of buildings, grass, dirt, etc. Now like I said, these will be the most severe and usually cause the most damage. Now, we usually don't see those around here necessarily, but those actually could happen. And those are definitely some of the most dangerous storms.
So not only are there different types of thunderstorms, but there are also three types of supercells as well, correct?
Yes.
All right, so we have classic supercells, HP or high precipitation, or LP or low precipitation.
Right, so with your classic supercell, you're going to kind of see that setup right there. Those are usually, we kind of see those here, we normally see those in the plains as well, and those will give you just your typical setup, a very beautiful storm to see.
Right, and LP cells, you really don't, there's not much precipitation with that.
No, it's definitely, you have your low cloud bases. I remember learning in class, you can see the sun almost through the precip because there's not that much of it there.
Right, and that cloud itself is just very thin compared to the classic and the HP supercell.
Definitely a smaller scale for sure. And then finally you have your HP or high precipitation supercell, and with that, lots of rain. Usually the tornado is rain wrapped, so it can honestly be more damaging in terms, because a lot of the population can't even see the tornado within it.
Right, and you also have all that precipitation, so flooding issues also become a concern when you have that HP supercell.
Right, but definitely both of those, all three of those are something to see, especially when we're out there in the Southern Plains. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're learning about the climatology of thunderstorms and their impacts.
Plus, we'll discuss how the National Weather Service categorizes a severe thunderstorm.
Stay tuned.
In a world where entertainment is at risk, one man is given a mission, but he is about to face his biggest challenge yet. He will race against the clock and open doors to new possibilities that will save weekends as we know it.
What are you doing?
I'm looking for free movies.
Oh, I'll help you with that.
Just go to movies.valpo.edu. They have all the best movies, including The Hobbit and 22 Jump Street.
Whoa, it's that easy?
It's that easy.
Grab some popcorn, grab some buddies, and watch movies.valpo.edu's great selection.
What is passion? At Valpo, it's something that pours out of us uncontrollably. It's a late night shot of caffeine, cramming for finals, a jam session with friends. It sees deep into space, turns big stuff into small potatoes, floats boats, and floods the senses. Passion is alive, it has a heartbeat, and it lives in you. How do we know? Because at Valpo, passion is who we are.
Welcome back to the cold front.
We have just discussed how thunderstorms form and the types of supercells that we can see depending on the atmospheric conditions.
Now we are going to switch gears and discuss thunderstorm climatology, the impacts of thunderstorms, and how the National Weather Service classifies a severe thunderstorm.
Okay, so first we're going to start off with thunderstorm days. So that is actually when you hear thunder at a station. So that can mean thunderstorms, that could be one thunderstorm that day. It can be a myriad of thunderstorms that day, but it's still only one thunderstorm day.
Right, and we have to classify it as a thunderstorm day because it's really difficult to distinguish how many thunderstorms there were in that day.
Right.
Because you could have, like we mentioned earlier, a multi-cell that has continual development of thunderstorms, and because of that, you could have technically 3 thunderstorms that day, but it's still considered only one thunderstorm day.
Right, and some issues with this classification is exactly, say you have a thunderstorm at 11:55 at night, and then you have another thunderstorm at 12:30 a.m.
Right.
Well, that's 2 thunderstorms right there, and that could be only actually 2 thunderstorm days right there, but that can only be like one storm, you know?
Right.
So that caused some issues with that as well. Also, population bias. You know, it could be out in the middle of nowhere and no one can actually hear the storm.
Right, if you're compared to the Chicago suburbs to
Right.
maybe North Dakota, you're going to have a great difference in population there of who's hearing thunderstorms and who's not.
Exactly. So next we could talk about the maximum thunderstorm activity. Now, usually we see that in the tropics.
Right.
So that is because you have a lot of moisture, you have instability of lift, all present in this one specific area, versus with us, sometimes it's harder to get all 3 of those combined.
And within the tropics, you have a lot warmer temperatures, so you're going to see that more frequently throughout the year as well. Whereas in the United States, in the winter, we have a sharper gradient or more temperature differences across the U.S. So, of course, in Florida, you're going to see temperatures in the 60s in the wintertime, but in North Dakota, you're going to see temperatures below 0. So you really only have a small window for seeing those thunderstorms within the U.S.
Right, now for us, our max frequency is located in Florida, and I think
Right.
that's about 100 days a year they usually see
Correct.
thunderstorms. Now, exactly, you know, you kind of get that tropical feel there. You have your land sea breezes right there that can cause thunderstorms and convection. You also have your warmer sea temperatures. It's usually warmer most of the year around, besides like during the winter months when their temperatures do drop. So yeah, that is where we usually see most of our thunderstorms in the United States.
Even though most people usually think it's in the Tornado Alley area
Right.
of Oklahoma and Kansas, actually, it's not. It's Florida.
Right.
We're not talking about tornadoes, obviously. It's just
No.
severe thunderstorms.
Exactly. So all across the United States, you know, there's different peaks of when places can see those thunderstorms.
Right. Now, you have a nocturnal max, or during the night in the Central Plains. That's going to be your Nebraska, your Oklahoma, your Kansas, and also the Northern Plains as well. But then the closer you get to the Rockies,
Yes.
that area over there, you're going to see it closer in the early afternoon, because that's where those storms really start to develop with the mountain influence as well.
Right. Now, next, near the southern plains, you're going to get those storms usually in the late afternoon, and that's because of that low-level jet. You just have a lot of moisture surge from the Gulf exactly due north, and that's where they get their most intense storms, just because of that forcing right there.
Right. And just typically throughout the entire U.S., we see about 1,300 tornadoes
Yes.
per year, which you could see way below that, where there's been some years where we've only seen 900, or some years
Right.
where we've seen almost 1,500 or even more than that. It all depends on a ton of different factors going on besides just your lift, your moisture, your instability, and all that.
Right, so I think we're going to switch gears
Yeah.
here and talk about thunderstorm climatology. So in front of me I have an article from Iowa State, and it talks exactly about where in the United States do we see the most thunderstorms, things like that. So yeah, just looking at my article here, you see Florida has 100, like I said before,
Right.
and the more you move north, those days decrease significantly.
Especially as you move west, as you get into that
Yes.
intermountain region, you're really not going to see any tornadoes or big thunderstorms over there.
Right, so it definitely all depends on terrain and location, and you know, a lot of people think, oh, California, you know, nice weather, maybe we'll see some storms there, but they actually, especially along the coast, only get about 5 thunderstorm days per year. Now that's usually because with their climatology, you know, it doesn't really change as much. You get your coastal influence, especially off the Pacific Ocean, bringing in that colder air compared to Florida. We have that more tropical air.
Right. So now we're going to go with what the National Weather Service is saying right now. So we mentioned a severe thunderstorm, or a thunderstorm day is what we classify each day as if there was a thunderstorm that day. But there's actually certain requirements as to if we classify it as a severe thunderstorm. So in order for it to be severe, according to the National Weather Service here, you need to have hail that is 1 inch or greater, and you need to have wind gusts over 58 miles per hour. So we need those requirements in order to classify it as a severe thunderstorm.
Right, and you may think, okay, 45 miles per hour, that's still pretty gusty, but yeah, definitely this is just, it's basically an operational definition. It's
Right.
about the damage it could produce, not exactly how severe things are, but mainly it's more the severe parts and damage and hurting the population as well.
Right, and it's always good to remember that there's still a chance of seeing hail greater
Oh, yes.
in size than that, or even winds over 100 miles per hour without even seeing tornadoes.
Right. So next we're going to switch gears here and talk about the difference between a severe thunderstorm watch and a severe thunderstorm warning. Now I know a lot of this can be confusing at times, so I'm going to read it directly off of what the National Weather Service has to say. So quoting the National Weather Service here, for severe thunderstorm watch, severe thunderstorms are possible in and near the watch area. So this is around your county. You would usually hear, for me, I'm from Will County, Illinois, you would hear, okay, in Will County. So exactly where you are located. It says, stay informed and be ready to act if a severe thunderstorm warning is issued. The watch area is typically large and covering numerous counties or even states. So usually severe thunderstorm watches, they can be lasting hours even and cover just a really large area. It's not very localized because they don't know exactly when or where it's going to happen, but okay, be alert for the day. Now the difference with the warning here, now this is going to be very localized, exactly where the storms are going to occur. Now warning, this is quoting from the National Weather Service here, warnings indicate imminent danger to life and property. Take shelter in a substantial building. Get out of mobile homes that can blow over in high winds. Warnings typically encompass a much smaller area and that may be impacted by large hail or damaging winds identified by a National Weather Service forecaster.
Right, and when you're in a severe thunderstorm watch, you just need to be alert during the day. But
Right.
when you're in that warning, that's when you actually need to take cover.
Exactly.
And so one is being prepared, one is actually taking action right then.
Right.
So now we're going to go over what you could do to be prepared if you are under a severe thunderstorm watch that day. One of the things that we're going to be talking about is what the National Weather Service is saying here. They have the little weather radios that
They
you
do.
could get. A lot of people have these. It's really good to use. It'll alert you if there's a severe thunderstorm watch or warning for your area, or also if there's a tornado watch or warning for your
Right.
area. So it's always good to get those, to program those. Real good to stay safe. National Weather Service also says to create a communication plan with your family and to practice that plan. You want to prepare your home as well. You want to make sure that you have a place in your home that you could go to if severe weather does strike, whether it be your basement or an interior room like your bathroom if you don't have a basement.
Right, definitely, especially if you live in a trailer park, make sure to get out of that trailer park immediately. Even go to a local fast food restaurant, things like that. You really want to be in that sturdy structure.
Right, that's very important. All right, so then we have what you could do during severe weather.
Right, so like we kind of mentioned earlier, whenever you hear the severe weather alert, you want to take shelter immediately. So if you are in your home, like Sabrina said, go to a bathroom, head to your basement, anything very sturdy that you know will not blow over if a severe thunderstorm is going to occur.
Right, you want to make sure you stay away from those windows. If you have even anything to cover your head, that's good as well. I know some people, one of my family members actually have helmets for their little kids in the basement to make sure if any glass or any sharp objects were to hit near their head. People also say to put pillows over your head or couch cushions. That's also another option.
Right, it's also good to have a radio with you as well downstairs. That way you know, okay, the severe thunderstorm warning is over, because you do not want to go out if a warning has not been canceled.
Right. And it's also important to know where to go during severe weather when you're outside. Earlier this week, I checked out a local park to find the best shelter. Here's the story. Imagine playing at the park with your kids, and then you hear. It's a mild spring day, but the skies have turned gray. What do?
Probably go to that house over there and knock on the door, honestly. Yeah, I'd have to go to the closest house.
Even little kids know what to do if severe weather strikes.
You should go inside.
It's a different story, though, when the public park doesn't have an indoor shelter. The National Weather Service states that you want to avoid tall objects, bodies of water, and open fields. I visited my local park to see if I can find a place to protect myself, and it was actually pretty hard to find.
Once you find your lowest lying area, you want to get to it as soon as possible. Now, it may be a bit dirty, but your safety is the biggest concern. You don't want to be on your knees. You want to actually get down on your stomach, put your hands over your head, and wait until the storm passes.
While it's best to get in, get down, and cover up, we don't always have that option.
We live in tornado alleys, so you have to be prepared.
One of your best bets is to keep your phone handy on you throughout the day, checking weather updates on weather apps. One of my favorite to use is Radar Scope. It's easy for anyone to use. Just open it up, and you see right here if severe weather is headed your way.
It doesn't hurt to be extra cautious. Have a severe weather plan in place for at home and outside. Reporting for VU TV, I'm Sabrina Bates.
Another commercial break coming up, but when we come back, we will be talking about the opportunities VU has to offer in terms of learning about severe storms out in the field.
And later, we'll be talking with a VU student on his experiences with storm chasing.
We'll be right back.
Well, I think that's all we need. Thank you so much for coming in. We'll be in touch.
Okay, this is it. Just shake his hand and walk out with your head held high. Don't mess this up. Thank you. Nailed it. Don't let a bad handshake get in the way of getting the job you want. Find out more at the Career Center.
Thanks for sticking with us. Did you know that Valparaiso University has a student-run weather club that storm chases?
Well, that's right. This club is called Valparaiso University Storm Intercept Team, or VUSIT for short. This organization holds meetings when the environment looks ideal for severe storms, which are called code yellows.
When this group decides to chase, they announce a code red and establish base support in the Weather Center to help forecast for those out in the field. News meteorologist Katie Nicolau and myself attended the recent meetings to see exactly how they decide if they are going to chase and where to go.
You probably have your own sign. Is the sheet got around? Yeah, he is.
It got down to like the teens across this part of Illinois.
The model's forecasting convection topping in southern Indiana, forcing the line better usually. Shortwave trough going across the U.S., and that's going to be our player for tomorrow. There should be a low pressure system that develops. Yeah, and yeah, we want that. That's going to help with rising motion.
Circle the advections.
Don't do that.
Is 17Z. This is the prefrontal stuff I think we'd be looking at. Right along the front, you can see it's advecting.
DVA is cyclonic vorticity advection. Do people know what vorticity is?
Yeah. Once the squall line moves through, everything's done.
Yeah.
So what are you looking for, like satellite, or?
Things we noticed, what I was able to look at last night,
I'm the deputy director, so I'm the one that leads forecast discussion the day before we usually go out for severe weather events.
I'll run into the 12Z. Cameron talked to the guy who they
The code yellow, yesterday everything looked interesting. There looked like a couple parameters that could set up, potentially give tornadoes, and then this morning, after looking at it further, we determined that they're looking a lot better than yesterday, so we're really interested and we think it's worth it to go down south today.
pretty favorable coupled jet theory, which is essentially just also an updraft. Pretty clear there, which I think when we were looking at the models yesterday, they were showing more.
I think one of the big things is that it is getting late in the year. There's only 4 or 5 weeks of school left, so we are probably running out of opportunities to go chase, and so we were presented with a decent setup. It wasn't perfect, but it was, we think, good enough.
There's a good amount of cape, so there's a good amount of potential energy to get these storms going. And there's going to be warmer temperatures, a lot of moisture down there, and as of recently, there's a lot more shear. So once those storms get turning, that's when it gets really interesting, and that's what we've been looking for. Usually, we'll get to a location, we'll set up, we'll wait, and we'll look at the models again, we'll look at current obs, we'll do some nowcasting, and then we'll determine where to go from there. So if there's a storm firing, we'll most likely head to that. If nothing's fired yet, if the model said, oh, hey, there's going to be a storm here, we'll try to get closer to that position to see if that verifies.
I guess I'll get a good idea of how VUSIT chases go, just since I've never been on one, so I'll use that further down the road next year.
The way the prefrontal stuff's kind of looking, maybe a good area would be Rushville to.
And then, so drivers then would be me.
Right now, it looks like we're heading towards Muncie, Indiana, so it's about 15 to 20 miles northeast of Indy. So it's going to be a nice little drive.
I'm just hoping we do see something, even if it's not a tornado, just some cool storms, lightning, wind, clouds, whatever it might be. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
We're hoping for tornadoes, but everything's possible right now. Rain is definitely going to happen. There might be some hail, freezing levels are low enough. There can be some straight line winds too, but we're really hoping to see a tornado or two.
I love it.
Hey, if you guys haven't gone to the restroom,
I'm setting up the CV radios.
Got the old CB hooked up. Hello everybody, this is a little weather update for VU Sit. We're out today. Our target area we're hitting is Shelbyville. To get in front of the storms, right now there's an enhanced risk for most of central and southeastern Indiana. So we'll keep you updated as we go throughout the day and hopefully get some good footage for you guys, and we'll catch you later. A little better for me actually. Yeah, it's 11 knots. We're actually gonna stop in. Hello everybody, this is another weather update. We just got to Indianapolis, or just south of Indianapolis. We're still on our way to Shelbyville. We're about 20 minutes out where we're gonna stop and kind of wait for storms to develop. It's actually looking like we're gonna have a pretty good day for some severe weather. We're upgraded to a moderate risk for severe convective development. So we'll stay tuned to hopefully get you some better footage throughout the day.
The storm could reserve allocated as well.
We're finally getting some good clearing here.
Move the cars over here for more.
Welcome back. I'm meteorologist John Hammersmith. We're here just outside of Shelbyville, Indiana, and you can see behind me where water's already going over the roads. They've had plenty of rain here throughout the day, and they're going to continue to see another band of rain start to push through later today. And this band of rain could have some severe weather in it. That's why we are out here going to follow these convective storms. The SPC has issued a moderate risk for most of central and southeastern Indiana. We'll continue to keep you updated throughout the day as these storms start to develop. So we just got done looking at radar and we see a cell developing just north of Columbus, and it's kind of pushing its way. It'll be a little south of us here. So we're relocating down to Greensburg, Indiana to kind of get on that southeast side of it so we stay away from that rain base and hail core, and then we can get some better images of it.
Anybody looking at navigation?
I know where we're at.
Making sure. Don't want to miss another turn.
Absolutely. No, it'll tee into 46.
I love.
Yeah, it's a weird velocity signature.
Just looks like the storm.
We also sat down with meteorology professor Dr. Bart Wolf to talk about the meteorology convective field study that the university sponsors and his personal experience with storm chasing.
Let's take a look.
When I came and interviewed in 1993, one of the questions that the students at the time asked me is if I had storm chasing experience, if I had interest in starting a storm chase group, if I were to come to Valpo. So it was a natural. I had chased in grad school as well as when I was a postdoc, but students wanted it, so it was easy. So as soon as I got here, we organized what then became VUSIT, and we took the week-long trips for a couple of years when during the May and June period where we normally now have the courses, just to try to get the logistics ironed out and everything. But yeah, it was pretty easy. I didn't really have to incite anybody with ideas or anything. They all had ideas. Let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. So yeah, it was the first year, very first year. Well, obviously you want to be in a situation where you can get at the potential storm. So I mean, if we're in Montana, let's say from previous couple of days, and there's going to be activity developing, let's say in Oklahoma, logistically it's not a realistic situation, even though the development is going to happen. But assuming that you're in a reasonable location, you look for the four kind of key points that the key factors that go into severe storms, and that is enough moisture, low-level moisture, so you get clouds and precipitation, enough forcing, so you get the whole process started, instability, so the air will rise very rapidly on its own, and then also wind shear, the change of wind direction or speed with height, to give the storm some internal organization. Most interesting ones, well, there's been all kinds of cool storms that we've seen over the years. Some of the most interesting ones, White Deer, Texas tornado, multiple vortex, big tornado. I think Adam was a student at that time. He might have been on that trip as a student. We've seen heavy hail events. One of the more interesting events that we saw was on a trip, again, when Adam was a student, and there was very little severe weather the entire trip. In fact, I think we went 9 straight days without even a slight risk anywhere in the country. But we got severe hail twice in one day up in eastern Wyoming. So that was forecast particularly well by the students. And of all the SPC logs that day, we had half of the reports. So it was kind of cool. But I mean, we've seen big tornadoes. Another instance, a multiple vortex F3 in Illinois on the big trip. We came back from Iowa, and everybody else had kind of bailed on the potential for that day, but we stayed with it and got some a real nice multiple vortex tornado. So there's been all kinds of different instances, and generally speaking, I think the students do a great job in forecasting. We just kind of make sure that we don't get any mortal danger, but otherwise, yeah, there's been lots of cool stuff.
One last break, but when we come back, we'll be speaking with a meteorology student that has many years of experience in terms of storm chasing.
Plus that and more in just a few minutes. Welcome back to the cold front.
Throughout this episode, we have explained in detail the various characteristics of severe thunderstorms and their climatology. We also showed the different organizations and programs VU has to offer, where students can put the knowledge they have learned in the classroom to use out in the field.
So we're welcoming here Will White. He's a senior meteorology major and also the treasurer of VUSIT. So Will, how long have you been storm chasing?
I've been storm chasing now for about 5 to 8 years. I graduated high school in 2010 and actually saw my first tornado April 9th of 2015. That was the Fairdale Rochelle tornado.
Okay, so since then, it's been quite a few years. How many tornadoes have you seen, if you could count a number?
I'd probably say I'm in the 25 range.
Okay.
Roughly right about now.
So wow. So like a range between EF0, EF5?
Yeah, the bulk of the tornadoes I've seen, I think, are in the EF0 to EF3 range.
Okay.
But the strongest one would be my first tornado actually was the Rochelle Fairdale one that was in EF4.
Okay.
Okay, so like for these tornadoes that you've seen, all 25 of them, were they located in a specific location? Like was there a hot spot that you normally chase at, or were these all over?
Majority of my storm chasing's done here locally in the Midwest between Indiana and Illinois. But I have gone out to the Central Plains on our VUSIT summer chases, and I've seen a couple, or not a couple, probably a dozen or so tornadoes now through those chases as well.
What meteorological setup do you look for when you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to go chase today?
I tend to look for temperatures that are at least above 55 degrees, dew points in the 50s to 60s or warmer, or higher, I should say. I generally like to have a good upper level jet setup, so a strong upper level jet to support lifting motion, and then in our lower levels, a strong low-level jet to help also bring some curving or turning in the atmosphere, lower parts of the atmosphere, to help produce supercells, which then later hopefully produce tornadoes.
So did you learn all that through your experience or through your education in the meteorology department?
There's a little bit of both. So, I mean, I've had a passion for weather ever since I was little. My mom was saying that my passion started even when I was in preschool. So I knew a lot about the weather when I was young, but then throughout the years of my years at Valpo here, I've definitely learned a lot of stuff here, and it's only helped enhance my overall knowledge of meteorology.
So you mentioned the Rochelle tornado was your first tornado you saw. Now, would you classify that as your most memorable weather experience, or do you have another one that stands out?
That was definitely a big moment in my life. I actually was interviewed by ABC News for that tornado because I came back the following day to help clean up damage and stuff like that. So that was definitely a big memory of mine. But I think one of my favorite tornadoes is probably going to have to be the Washburn, Illinois tornado, which was February 28th of last year.
Okay.
It couldn't have been a more perfect setup as far as the chase setup went. We showed up, and about 5 minutes later, this tornado came down from the storm and just tracked right across the field from us, and it was just the perfect place. We didn't have to do anything. It came right to us. So that was pretty amazing.
So you mentioned that being the end of February. Do you see that you find most of your tornadoes in spring or maybe like in the winter months?
It's been a mix. I know last year we saw several tornadoes. At least I saw several tornadoes in the month of August.
Okay.
I had 2 tornadoes in early August and 2 in the end of August, both in Illinois and Indiana. And then I've had tornadoes, though, I've seen in 2 days before Christmas out in western Illinois. That was a freak day where we decided to go out and ended up seeing this beautiful, flimsy, white little tornado. It was a beautiful thing. And then right before that, we saw a huge, bright rainbow. And then the rest of the setups, though, have usually been later in the spring into early summer, though.
So you do have a lot of chase experience. Would you want to continue this in the future and maybe incorporate this into part of your career?
I would love to if my job would allow it.
Right, right.
But if I get an off day, or I can get an off day for work, I'll probably still do it. I mean, it's a great, fun passion. I also do photography, and nature and weather photography is a huge part of my life. So if I can, I'll try to get out and do some more of that as well.
So what goes on when you chase? Because I know a lot of people don't really go storm chasing. Right. They really don't know what happens. Do you go by yourself? Do you go with people? What equipment do you bring? What's the whole methodology behind that?
So depending on the setup, it changes. So if it's going to be a tornado event, for instance, I'll tend to bring one other person with me. I'm usually the one who drives, and they'll be my navigator and person who checks the radar, so I can keep my eyes on the road and safe with that kind of stuff. They'll check the weather, they'll check the road network, all that stuff to make sure we're safe. We have our exit routes and all that kind of stuff for the setups. If it's a more downgraded severe weather event, so it's just, let's say, a small hail or a wind event, I'll go up by myself, and instead of chasing, I'm more spot just so I can verify if there's any warnings for severe hail or wind, so I can get that to the National Weather Service. Other than that, though, most of the time I usually bring at least one other person so I can help them keep the setup more safe for me.
So do you regularly go storm spotting and report in different warnings and what you see?
Yeah, I've been a storm spotter since my junior year of high school.
Okay. It's a long time.
Yeah, a very long time since I graduated high school in 2010. But yeah, it was something I've always wanted to do. And I guess it's the closest I can get right now to being in the National Weather Service. I interned there, and I'd hope to get a job there later on in my career. But for now, getting the reports in are extremely helpful. I learned that from my internship. It's one thing to forecast the weather and see it from a radar screen. It's another to actually get reports in from someone in the field and to verify those warnings and stuff like that. It also helps save lives in the long run. I mean, those warnings can really help get people to finally take cover when it comes to severe weather.
Right. Now, during any of your experience, have you ever gone through tornado damage or helped anyone who was maybe having some problems with either trees down or were trapped?
Yeah, on most of my occasions of just either if I'm going out spotting or chasing, I tend to come across branches in the road or something like during a windstorm. There'll be a tree down, I'll try to move it if I can. I don't have a truck, I have a car, so a lot of times it ends up with me calling the police or public works, they'll come out and move it. But I have come across damage from tornadoes. April 9th was a big one where we didn't directly come across damage during our chase, but we came back after the fact, and I helped clean up some property damage and helped some locals with their effects. February 28th, the Washburn tornado, when we were sitting there watching the tornado go by, just out of frame from one of our videos or next to us, a house was hit. And after it passed, we went over and helped them, checked on the house.
Okay.
They ended up being fine. They had some structural damage to their house, and their barn was leveled, but everyone inside tended to be fine. And that's something I tend to do more with my EMA or emergency management background, is knowing that it's important to first give the warnings and the information to the National Weather Service. If something is then hit, then you go into recovery mode and you go then and help people with the aftermath after that.
Right. Now, I'm sure you find yourself in areas where you probably don't have cell service, you're kind of in the middle of nowhere, as you would call it. What do you do to either get your information, to look at radar, for example, or even to contact the National Weather Service if you don't have any service?
That has
Just a
happened a few
problem,
times
yeah.
to us. Yeah. I'm working on getting my ham certification. It's something I wish I would have had in some of those occasions. It would at least help getting the notifications out to the National Weather Service since they directly track that. When it comes to getting weather data, we tend to try and set up ourselves to the point where we know that the storm's going to be tracking away from us, and we're not going to be in the storm's dangerous path or the path of that storm. So then we don't have that issue of worrying about getting hit. We also try to have escape routes. So that's one big thing when we're out storm chasing. When we set up for a storm, we set up so that we're to the southeast of the actual storm. Storms would tend to track to the northeast or the east. So you know that it should be tracking away from you. And then you always have an escape route either north, south, or east, west. So you have different ways to go in case that storm did decide to turn or track a little bit different. So that's how we try to avoid it. But hopefully, we just hope it never happens to us. I mean, I know it's happened in the past where storm chasers have put themselves in a bad location, but we try not to get that close to where we have time to actually make the decision to move if we needed to.
Right. Well, it's definitely good to hear that you do exercise caution, especially when chasing, but that's really awesome to hear all the cool stories that you've seen, all the tornadoes that you've helped with, and especially the emergency management side afterwards.
Yeah, and you've talked about your day chases and everything, but we've actually also been on the convective field study as well.
All of us together.
Yeah, we could talk about that just for a brief amount of time, how for the convective field study. I know we talked with Bart Wolf earlier, the professor here in the meteorology department, but this chase is for about 10 to 11 days. I know when I went on it, we were on the same chase, Will. We saw about 4 tornadoes across. You were on it too, obviously, but I was referring to Will. We saw, the one that was in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas,
and Colorado.
Colorado, right. So we had all 4 of those. That was a really cool experience just to see how in each location, each storm just looked a little bit different.
Yeah. I remember exactly the first one that we saw. It was just so beautiful. I've never seen a storm look that amazing, incredible. Usually, especially back here, we have a lot of buildings, a lot of housing, things like that, so you can't really see that far out. But just being in that out in the middle of nowhere location, seeing that storm just turn, it was beautiful. What about you, Will?
I love Central Plains storms just because they tend to be LP or low precipitation storms. You can actually see them. A lot of the stuff that you have around here, they tend to be HP or high precip. So you see the tornado initially, but then really quickly the rain wraps around the back end of it, and then it's completely obscured, and then it becomes a really dangerous situation. We've ran into that issue before. June 22nd, for instance, 2 years ago, I was up near Dixon, Illinois. And we had an issue where we kind of put ourselves on the northern end of the storm where you don't want to be, and a tornado ended up forming. It was completely rain wrapped in it.
I remember that storm.
Until you were a quarter mile from it, you couldn't really see it. So I mean, that's not a fun thing to deal with. when you're in the Central Plains, you generally don't deal with
Right,
that kind of
right.
stuff. And
Yeah.
it's a very picturesque type of system. And you can just see for miles. You don't have to worry about towns or buildings being hit. It's just
Right.
open plains. And that's what I love about chasing in the plains is that whole setup.
Yeah.
And then it's also the weather style or the weather ingredients out there are just a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have dry lines here in the Midwest, but you have them out
Right.
there, and that adds a whole different element when it comes to forecasting, which
Exactly.
it makes things a lot more interesting.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more exciting because we live here. We're not used to the weather over there, so it kind of just gives
Right.
it an entirely different feel trying to forecast that area.
And then you can be miles from a tornado and you can still see it like it's right there. I remember
Yeah.
the Colorado one, for
Yes.
instance. We were maybe 2 miles from that storm, but you could see it perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing was obscuring the view at all.
Definitely gorgeous.
Yeah.
We were definitely lucky on that chase to see all of those storms.
We definitely were.
All right, it was great to have you here, Will, to talk about storm chasing and your experiences with it.
It's great having you guys. Thank you.
Well, that just about does it for another episode of The Cold Front. Our next episode will be in 2 weeks. Follow us at VU TV Weather on Facebook for the latest weather updates.
Also, stay up to date on the latest news here on campus and around the country by following VU TV on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
I'm Joy.
And I'm Sabrina. Have a great week, Valpo.